All right, guys, happy Friday. Emily's working on some tech issues over there. So kick this off with just me and Saagar. How's it going, guys?
Hello. How are you, everybody? It's good to see you on Friday here. We had a fun night with the baby, but we're still here for for all of you.
You want to share some details?
Oh, I mean, nothing that any newborn parent doesn't know. Yeah. There's a lot of screaming. There's a lot of crying. It's all right, you know. It's like 1 a.m. therapy sessions and other things that we have to deal with. But it's
just
cool.
remember, this phase doesn't last.
Everyone says that.
It's true, and then it moves on to another phase, which will also be difficult in its own ways. Right. But the just like endurance phase of no sleep is, compared. It feels like it will last forever. Right now, I promise you, it doesn't last forever.
All right. Okay.
Emily, do we have you yet?
Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yay.
Yes,
oh, yeah,
there she is. She's there.
There we go.
Excellent.
I come to these things to hear about your lives, basically. So
right, of course.
That's what everybody's here for.
We catch up on Friday.
We do miss having Ryan, though, because he always has some interesting nugget to drop on us, always.
Yes, that's like right. That he's already 10 minutes late for a meeting, but Ryan's on his way to Ireland, so.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Safe travels to him.
Yeah, safe travels, Ryan.
We have a bunch of stuff we are going to try to get to this morning, but I don't think we'll get to all of this. But we've got new Epstein stuff, in particular, the Andrew Schultz and the Flagrant pod reacting to the lack of Epstein disclosures and closing of the case, and a lot of interesting things there. Some Trump regrets going on in that pod, so we'll dig into that. We've also got new tariffs announced. We've got new Zohran freak out, and we've got new stuff going on with Israel with immigration. One thing I am bound and determined to get to, but it'll probably be in the premium half of the show, is billionaire Bill Ackman apparently paid his way into a pro tennis match in which he was he's 59 years old.
Yes.
He's not a pro tennis player. Gets, of course, completely humiliated. The other players on the court, it was a doubles match, are just sort of like tapping the ball to him so that it's not completely humiliating. Andy Roddick went off on his podcast, and I'm obsessed. I enjoy watching tennis. So I'm interested in it from that angle, but like I am endlessly fascinated and horrified by the mind of the billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you watch golf too, Krystal? Like you have a high tolerance.
But billionaires don't play in pro golf
because of
they
Kyle.
Just attend the Masters, right? You know, it's like this. It's certainly another thing. I mean, again, I don't watch a lot of tennis. I used to when I was a lot younger, but you know, the idea that you're going to pay your way into playing some of like the top 200 or 300 players in the world, and then force them to like lower their level of play just to accommodate your beliefs, and then post like a long essay about how like. What did he say? He was like, it was really one of the scariest things I've ever done. It's just actually shocking, the level of hubris. So.
Completely shocking. Like, yes. I mean, you know, I was like a fairly high level. I played, you know, swam Division I. And the idea that like me at this age would get in the pool with someone who was even a Division I, let alone like an Olympic, it's so preposterous. I can't even wrap my head around why you would sign up for that level of public humiliation, which is exactly what he did. So anyway, we could talk more about that later.
We have video and we have an essay.
Yeah.
So
we have video, we have essays.
We have Andy Roddick going off on, I mean, he was so offended because this was part of some like, you know, Hall of Fame matches. And he's obviously part of the Hall of Fame because he was such an extraordinary American male tennis player. And so he just felt like this was an absolute defiling of the sport that he cares so much about. So in any case, that will probably be in the premium portion. Let's go ahead and jump into some of these clips from the Flagrant pod. So the first one, I think the first one I have here, is where they're specifically talking about the promise to release the Epstein files. And then now Trump being like, I can't believe why are you even bringing this guy up? Like this creep, why do you even care about this guy? Let me go ahead and play this.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? We have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
So we're stupid. Yeah. we're the fucking idiots, guys. That is, I think, what is enraging people right now is it's insulting our intelligence. Like, obviously, the intelligence community is trying to cover it up. Obviously, the Trump administration is trying to cover up. Something changed because they ran on this idea of exposing it all. All these guys had great ideas. Cockeyed Cash, Dan Bongino, good stuff. He was ready to tear it all down. He was ready to tear down the entire FBI office.
Shut down the Hoover building day one. Them bitch still standing.
And then he goes on Joe Rogan and he's like, listen, do you think if I had it, I wouldn't share it with you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I do believe that 100%, especially when you're staring at me like this, telling me that. Once you protect pedophiles, you are the most cockeyed person in the entire world.
So one of two things, in my mind, is possible. One, you're covering it up. Or two, nothing really happened and you exploited the rape of thousands of children to get your man elected. So which one do you want here?
That is a very good point there at the end.
I like it. And actually, it's sad that Ryan's not here because he had the best analysis for me, which was for a lot of people, specifically like podcasts, online, like, we can't ever determine like what percentage of the vote swung that way to Trump, but a lot of it was vibes based. And the vibe based was of the outsider exposing the insider, right? And that's kind of how Kamala, how Biden, how the outsider campaign, regardless of whether you say they're establishment or not, like that's how it came off and read to a lot of people. And the Epstein story is kind of this vector where for many people, they're like, if you're going to lie to me about this, or if you're not going to talk about this, if you're not going to be honest about this, then there's all these other things that you are lying to me about. And so that's why, Ben Shapiro recently was like, well, Epstein actually is, like the lowest list of priorities for people. And it's like, nobody's saying it's a priority. It's not like the number one thing, but it's the extent to which you exploited it for your political ends. I mean, in Cash and Dan Bongino's case, they literally got rich talking about this stuff. So it's actually extra objectionable to me. But the reason why, I was listening to a Shane Gillis podcast this morning with my friend Matt McCusker, same thing. They're like, guys, like this is the most bullshit thing ever. They're like, oh, I guess he's, totally innocent. Shane was like, maybe, Trump is, it's like, it's obvious Trump is trying to cover something up. He's probably in the Epstein files. This is, again, like it is a vector of understanding the visceral, like disgust of business as usual and of Washington. You can critique that if you want to. I know Michael Tracy and others have, but regardless, if you're going to sell something like this grand vision to the American public, you either have to deliver, or if you're not going to deliver, you need an extremely transparent process instead of basically boils down to trust me, bro. And I do think it is an important like vibe, cultural based conversation around Donald Trump for a lot of the people out there for who this was their entree point into politics, which is definitely in the millions. I'm not going to sit here and claim it's, the swing voter or any of that, but it was a useful understanding and heuristic. And Trump, in that clip, I think he's really not going to be able to live that down for a while, because it's like, you can't really come to another conclusion of like, you're covering some shit up, man. Like you're covering some shit up. You just can't get away from that.
I think it was a real gateway drug to politics for Gen Z, because the Epstein stuff was playing out in COVID and when TikTok was first starting to become extremely popular, and the gatekeepers lost a lot of their power around the Epstein story. And so I agree with everything Saagar just said, and want to just add to it. The inverse here is that the implication, if you are suddenly the Trump administration that is bumbling it in the most clumsy possible way. It is like a satire, the way Pam Bondi has screwed this story up, the way Cash, and like they just look ridiculous. So the inverse of that, it's not only that they are, or the outsiders coming in to expose the insiders, they are now horrible insiders, right? So it's not just that like they're covering up, it's that they're also now like completely complicit and really bad at it. Like it's just...
from my perspective, too, there was always a weirdness in expecting that Trump was going to release the Epstein files, because, first of all, whenever you asked him about it, he would get very squirrely. Back when he was in office the first time is when Epstein killed himself. And when he got asked about, hey, what do you think about Ghislaine Maxwell, who's on trial right now? He was like, I wish her well. So there's that.
And he doubled down on wishing her well.
Then there's the fact, like, we know they were friends. We've got pictures of them together. We have, like, he was on the flight multiple times. Epstein says they were besties for a long time. Like, there are a lot of entanglements there just with him, let alone with members of his administration. You were talking about Bill Barr and his dad giving Jeffrey Epstein his first job at this private school, even though he was like wildly unqualified. There's Alex Acosta, who negotiated, like signed off on the sweetheart deal down in Florida. Now you got Pam Bondi, who also was implicated down in Florida. So like, to me, it was always preposterous. And it was always, there was such a giant blind spot on Epstein where Trump was concerned, because all the fixation would be on Bill Clinton, which I'm happy to say, like, yes, he's also implicated here as well and had the connections, and Bill Gates and all these people too. But there was just like a willing blindness that Trump had any intermingling with this circle whatsoever. And so now that he has not only said, okay, well, there's nothing to see here, and he definitely killed himself, and here's the tapes, and we're closing all the cases into Prince Andrew and everything else. This is a done deal, nothing to see here. Now suddenly people started to go like, oh, he did have all of these associations with this dude, as it turns out. So the eyes are opening. There's a little bit of an awakening to what's going on here. Now, in terms of the MAGA base, they'll find a way to forgive and forget, as they always do. That's always happening. Alex Jones is saying, well, first of all, there's a scapegoating of Pam Bondi. Like, that's sort of the easiest, the go-to. Like, it's never Trump's fault. It's someone around him who's sabotaging him, blah, blah, blah. The other... In
fairness, Pam Bondi has been uniquely ridiculous throughout this, but yes.
Yeah.
Agreed. She is being scapegoated, yes.
Freelancing. And doesn't
Incredible
have Trump's complete, it's preposterous. And then the other one, there's more convoluted. Like, Alex Jones has decided that Trump is using the Epstein files to blackmail the deep state so that he can get his agenda done. It's like, okay, guys, sure, whatever.
Yeah, that's vintage QAnon for those of us who have been aware. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with any of that. I think largely it was because he's willing to talk about it, so there must not be anything going on there. I'm agreeing that that's cope, and I mean, look, this is why, again, the combo is important. Like you said, MAGA base. The MAGA base is going to forgive Trump for anything, but the point is about where is the culture going to go for a lot of people who are not MAGA in any way. I mean, if you look at Gen Z, Gen Z men in particular, I believe they voted for Trump. It's a slightly higher percentage than at any other time before. I'm saying in terms of even in the popular vote. Well, I do think that these types of stories were important. I don't think many of those men would consider themselves MAGA in any way. If anything, they're more of like an anti-left voter or anti-establishment left voter. Mm-hmm. They're very much up for grabs. Very much people, you've talked about this, Krystal, they were Bernie bros, or they were crypto Bernie bros, in terms of they didn't know it yet. At the time, they're probably too young. And if the Bernie movement had, let's say, stayed the course, they would have been Bernie guys, if they had stayed with the course.
Bernie gentlemen.
Bernie gentlemen. That's right.
We know about the Bernie to Trump pipeline. Now we may be getting the Trump to Bernie pipeline, or the Trump to DSA pipeline. Yeah. So also on that podcast, Anders Schultz said, hey, listen, the only people that seem to me like they're really America first are the DSA types like Bernie and Zohran. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
The only party right now that to me seems America first is the Democrat Socialist Party.
Yep.
Bernie is America first. Mamdani and all his ideas that he will not be able to execute, and I frankly think many of them are not good ideas, but he is no doubt New York first. The policies seem to want to help people here. Mm-hmm. That's what I care about. If MAGA wants to take this America first thing.
I love the dramatic music they put with this.
Yes, yeah. That's they have a very good social media team. You do have to hand it to them.
One lie, which is Epstein did not have a blackmail ring on all these very influential people. And by saying that didn't happen, you have to tell a lot of other little lies.
There you go. That's exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
And we're starting to see right through right now, and it's just embarrassing.
There you go.
So
that's exactly it.
That's a good clip because it also demonstrates the Israel issue. And this is why the Epstein and the Israel issue are both intertwined, not only quite literally whenever it comes to Mossad, but if you look, I mean, I hate to bring it back to Shane and all these other guys, but they are cultural touchstones. Like, we have to be honest. Tires was one of the biggest shows in America. Shane is probably the second biggest comedian in the United States behind like Joe Rogan or Dave Chappelle, maybe even the biggest if you look at ticket sales and others. But for him, I recently saw this clip where he was like celebrating whenever Trump would, like, oh, we're going to not bomb Iran. But then when he was like, oh, and Trump is back because he was saying Bibi should not be prosecuted. There is like a America first, like disgust at the obsession over Israel and the view that we are Israel's pawn, in this great game. And so there's the policy level. And then there's also the general vibe level where, again, with Mamdani, and I can't get away from this, the way that he was able to frame the others as obsessed with Israel and issues that have nothing to do with New York is one of the most important things that has happened in politics, You talked about this recently, Krystal, about the defeat. I mean, this is the largest Jewish city in America, right? In New York City, the largest Jewish population, or not even in America, in the whole world. And so
I think Tel Aviv is the only city in the world that has a larger population, Jewish population.
Right. So outside of Tel Aviv, to have him get elected on the back of, I would stay here in New York. That is, again, look at the way the Andrew message and all of that. That's important. And maybe we'll talk about this later with, like the news that like Joe Rogan is telling Trump not to do mass deportation and all of that. It's not policy based. It is a connection between the politician and the voter. We may have some disagreements. I may not even take some of the stuff you say so seriously, but I do think you're fighting for me. This is something, again, why it's so crazy for Trump. This was Trump's genius of the 2016 campaign.
Fighting for me against the insiders.
Campaign. Exactly. I was like, I'm fighting for you. What did he say? He's like, they're coming for me. They're coming for you. Like, I forget the exact quote. They're not coming for me. They're coming for you. But that was that was visceral, actually, for a lot of people. It was a major part of a lot of the ads, especially after the Butler, assassination attempt. And I think what they're doing is they're kind of seeding it away. I don't know if they said it in that clip. There might be another clip also where Schultz said this, but he was like, because he doesn't just talk about Epstein and about Israel. He was talking about the big, beautiful bill, right? So all of these things compound on each other. Yeah, let's take a listen.
Let me play this and I'll get your reaction all this on.
Yeah.
Over again. And this is my theory with are politicians individually corrupt? Perhaps, but I wonder if just the throne is like the institution, the systems in place are inherently kind of corrupt. And so you can have people like Cash, who's probably working in good faith while he's campaigning and on the buildup and all this time as a prosecutor for the state. He's doing good work and then gets into role, gets read in on a brief and goes, all right, never mind. You know what I mean? To me, that seems like the most logical thing.
I believe that about Trump. I believe when Trump, everything he campaigned on, I believe he wanted to do. And now he's doing the exact opposite thing of every single fucking thing.
I don't know what he's done. Yeah, exactly to your point. If you tell me, it's easier for me to believe you wanted to do all these things if any of them were happening in the way that you said they were.
To that point, there'll be people that they'll DM me and be like, you see what your boy's doing? You voted for this. I'm like, I voted for none of this. He's doing the exact opposite of everything I voted for. Yeah. I want him to stop the wars. He's funding them. I want him to shrink spending, reduce the budget. He's increasing it. It's like everything that he said he's going to do, except sending immigrants back. And now he's even flip-flopped on that, which I kind of like. But he's like, oh, well, we kind of need the people working in restaurants and we need our farmers. It's like everything that he said that he was going to do that he can campaign.
Well, he said to us, which was important, and I thought it was good. You pressed him on it. Well, you got to start with the criminals in terms of deporting. I don't even know if the criminals are getting sent back. I know there's a lot of people with green cards getting sent back. There's people who aren't criminals getting sent back. I don't know if you're sending back the criminals first. You definitely don't know first. I don't know if you're sending them back at all. So,
what'd you think of that, Emily?
Well, I just have to say this contrasts so starkly with the mood of Republicans in Washington and should be an incredible dose of cold water because they are riding very high. They feel great about the big, beautiful bill having things like no tax on tips. They feel very good about it having no tax on overtime. And we could get into the nuances of those policies, but they feel like they're on the cusp of something in Gaza and that Trump has all of the momentum in the world. I really can't state enough how that represents the way MAGA feels right now and the way the Republican Party here feels right now. They have the wind at their backs. That's what they think. And meanwhile, the vibes are not anywhere near where they are. And Saagar, I actually think part of what you talked about with Tucker Carlson this week, you made a very interesting point that the conversation you both were having on his show about 10 years ago might not have been happening in any mainstream way whatsoever in the depth and with the level of scrutiny and skepticism of the establishment that exists. And I think the Trump world believes that they have way more control over the discourse and the vibes than they actually do. That's a great point.
Actually, to pick up on that, it's true. I have been struck by the exact same feeling with people who are reaching out to me and be like, oh, why are you so down on Trump? And I was like, man, you guys just don't get it. I was like, you guys really think that this big, beautiful bill thing and this Iran thing, they're hoovering up all of this MAGA cope from Charlie Kirk's Twitter feed. And the irony is if you actually listen closely, if you listen to the Charlie Kirk show and all of that, there's not nearly as much of this whole trust Trump thing. I actually think it's a kind of a similar dynamic to how Democrats had the Twitter is not real life problem.
It's exactly
because MAGA has become such a ubiquitous like force on Twitter, and there's like all of these like blue check weird accounts that are just constantly posting like Trump wins or any of these other things, that they just really believe a lot of their own BS. Like they actually think the big beautiful bill is popular. It's shocking. I was like, I do not know what you guys are smoking to think that there is any level of like the enthusiasm for this beyond like what they're happy about is they're like, look at our legislative victory. Like we got this through the House. I'm like, bro, you're having a process conversation. Nobody gives a fuck about that. Yeah. You know, it's like they care about what's in the bill.
They call that like epistemic closure, where there's just no ability for other information to penetrate, because it's
Great point.
You've decided that polls don't like reflect reality. So even though every poll is like, this thing is underwater 40 points with independents, that's just completely discarded. They're like, yeah, but there was a cat turd poll that said whatever, you know?
Right.
Well, or but when people see it in their pocketbooks, they'll be happy. Like that's a lot of it.
That's the cope. And then, you know, because you have this like closed media ecosystem, and then Trump, you know, is not only a billionaire, but also is the president of the United States, and has gone out of his way to have nothing but just like the most embarrassing sycophants around him. And yes, man, he's certainly not getting any accurate information. And so, and, you know, I haven't heard, I don't know, I don't watch War Room every day, but I haven't heard Steve Bannon criticizing the big, beautiful bill since it passed.
No,
in advance,
not since it passed, but
in advance, he was sounding the alarm about like, hey, a lot of MAGA are on Medicaid, and hey, maybe we should like actually increase the taxes on the rich. Now this passed, he's basically shut up as far as I can tell. And so even though the messaging against this bill is so obvious, of like, they're taking your healthcare to fund a tax cut for the rich, even though that's such a layup, even Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer can figure it out. They're just so closed off from reality that they don't see it whatsoever. And then, you know, there's also just like a YOLO quality to this administration. I don't know if Trump is planning to run again, third term. I don't know what's going on there, but he's put the immigration bucket firmly in Stephen M's hands. You know, we'll talk maybe, I'm not sure if we're going to get to all this later or not. There was this Washington Post report that Joe Rogan was like, hey, you know, can we like dial it back with the farm workers and the whatever? Well, there's footage today of a massive raid, including like helicopters and militarized vehicles and whatever on a farm. So Stephen M.
It's a weed farm.
Alligator.
To be clear, it's a weed farm.
Yeah. It's still farm.
Yes. It's a marijuana farm. Well, that's
legal in California, Saagar.
All right.
But in any case, you've got Alligator Alcatraz, you've got CCOT. Like clearly, he's just like, Stephen M., you do your thing over there. And there seems to not really be any care or concern even for whether any of this is going to be politically palatable to the masses. And so that's been my biggest surprise from Rogan, Schultz, and others, is the discomfort with the immigration, with the deportation policy, because you could say a lot of things about like, so for example, on the Ukraine war, Trump has definitely been different than was advertised, right? You could say, you know, on cutting Medicaid, that's certainly different than advertised. Like, you know, there are things that I could say, okay, this is a little different than what was portrayed on the campaign trail, even though I would say if you look at the first term, you could have known, but okay, put that aside. I'll give you some grace there.
Yep.
On immigration, like, they had mass deportation now. Signs
I agree with you.
RNC. How did you not know? And if you just knew like the most basic facts about the immigrant population, the idea that there was this mass, like millions of criminals that they're going to be able to deport, preposterous. And then to the point of Andrew, I'm not sure who was talking in that clip about like
Akash.
Yeah, Akash was saying like, I don't even know if they're shipping out criminals. He's actually right about that. There's new reporting about it is much easier. If you're just going for numbers, it's much easier to just go to the farm, go to the Home Depot, go to the garment factory, go to like wherever immigrants tend to cluster. And these are predominantly law-abiding, you know, people who, you know, have been in the country for some amount of time. It takes more resources and more time to track down the criminal gang member. So the directions have come from Stephen Miller directly and are being interpreted, you know, down to the agent level of like, you don't have time to pursue those cases because we just need to get the numbers up, which means that actually far fewer criminal undocumented immigrants are being swept up and detained. It is much more of a numbers game of where can we go to get the largest number in the shortest amount of time.
Well, I mean, I think that could have been true before the 175 billion. If it stands like, we really are not like quite. I don't know yet. I read the same Nick Miroff Atlantic article that you're referencing there. That was prior to the passage of the bill, which massively, of course, funds like CBP, ICE, and all of these other places. But I do agree in terms of, this is part of the issue. Look, no offense. Many of these people are my friends, but this is part of the problem with vibes-based voting, right? Because what you're really reacting against Biden border chaos. And you're not taking a lot of this stuff actually literally and seriously. I did a monologue, you'll probably remember, Krystal, where I was like, hey, if you are voting on issues, I was like, here's how you should vote. And I can't stress enough how much people don't vote that way and then express surprise and shock whenever these things actually do happen. And this, unfortunately, that's just like the way a lot of the country votes. That's how it was during George W. Bush. Like, I would like to have a beer with him. And it's like, oh, well, that doesn't actually have anything to do with Iraq, but whatever. My point, I guess, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just saying there's one other piece I do want to say, though, about the Democratic Party, which is, we played that clip of him being like, hey, the people who seem like they're most America first is DSA. It really, it's one data point, but it really does expose the foolishness of thinking it's going to be like Dean Phillips and Alyssa Slotkin.
Yes. Yeah,
who
that's right.
bring back the bros, and so this old model of politics of, the way to win them back is to like go to the center and to be more corporate friendly and whatever. It's like, no, that's the polar opposite. Zohran Mamdani won the bros overwhelmingly of all races and classes. Like, it was a generational shift. And the bros freaking love Zohran. Andrew liked Zohran. Like, Rogan, the thing that he knew about Zohran was that moment on the debate stage where he was like, I'm going to stay here. I'm not going to Israel. So, I think there's something very important in that, even as you don't want to take like, the vibes of one particular podcast comedian. But when you look at the data, that is emblematic of like, if you actually want to win these guys back, it's no mystery what you need, what direction you need to go in. And so instead of like fighting Zohran tooth and nail and trying to destroy him, maybe there's something to learn here from this person who is like uniquely charismatic and has a policy platform that people really were excited about and find him personally compelling.
I also think it's a good, important lesson for the left. And this is something I was talking about yesterday with Zohran. But, the right-wing attacks right now are like, Zohran is a Muslim foreigner, right? And it's like, no, like Zohran is actually a very interesting study in the modern American left, from wearing shalwar kameez and flipping off Christopher Columbus and saying defund the police, in a glove.
Don't forget,
in a medical glove. Yeah. And to now wearing a suit and talking about New York first, going on the Abundance podcast, and then also talking. And, recently he was like, yeah, sure, maybe I'll keep the New York City police commissioner. But like, to me, like, Zohran feels as if he's talking about New York, which is in itself the opposite of being some sort of like foreign interloper, right? And so there is something that important too, again, if you do want to talk and take this Schultz thing and try and extrapolate it out into an American context. By the way, it's not just Schultz, it's Rogan, like you talked about. Tucker and my conversation, we were both praising Zohran for his answer specifically about this. Well, what does it come down to? Be American. Like, it's actually about being and defending America as a concept, and not some sort of like transnational, leftism and liberalism, which at its worst of the Democratic Party back in the 2000, to the extent that there was a vibes-based shift against immigration, it was like, they're for you, they're for them, and they're not for you. I still think a lot of that is very true. But, if you do want to overcome that message, you have to sell it in an American context and not in terms of feeling like sympathy for subgroups, DEI, and foreigners as opposed to your own citizens. This, again, is the vibe context to which Trump was able to win the immigration debate. I still don't think that the left or liberals have really like squared that circle. They can try, and that should be a project, in my opinion, of them for the next 3.5 years, like if they do want to win. But the reason why I think that they're the strongest, and why Akash specifically cited there about the green card example, and Emily, you noted free speech. This is why the Khalil case matters, right? Because you run on free speech, and then you go to Europe, and you lecture them, and then we're banning guys for having memes of JD on their phone. We're like, what the fuck are we doing here, And then same with the Khalil thing. We're like, yo, this guy and Ozturk are getting deported for co-signing an op-ed that nobody read about BDS at Tufts University. You're like, this is insane. This is totally insane. I talked here about that coffee shop case. I didn't have a chance to mention this on Tucker. Have I mentioned it here before? That the DOJ is suing this coffee shop in Los Angeles because they had a drink or whatever that said that, like, quote unquote celebrated Hamas. And it's like, yo, this is like going after that baker who wouldn't bake that cake for gays. I was like, this is the same bullshit, you know? I'm like, by the way, I stand with the baker and I stand with the coffee shop too.
Gay weddings. Yes.
The gay wedding. Sorry. Yeah. The gay wedding. But it's like, okay, like, let them do whatever the fuck they want to do. You know, it's not a civil rights violation. This is ridiculous. And like, that is, you know, to the hijack point about free speech and specifically on immigration. I think that's a very, very useful one, you know, for a lot of these, for a lot of like the Democratic Party and the modern left, to be able to point out, you know, that extent, not to mention the economic piece of all of this, where the big, beautiful bill comes in. So I've been thinking about this a lot. And that's why I think Zohran really is such an important candidate. And just the way the right is reacting to him, like in the way that they're calling him this, like, you know, Muslim Marxist interloper.
Islamist.
It's like,
Islamist.
yeah, It's like, guys.
What?
Yeah,
this
first,
guy,
look,
I mean,
he was just in the Pride Parade.
It's so funny.
Exactly.
It's so funny too to Indians, because I'm like, yo, this is the prototypical liberal Shia. Like, to me, he's got a Sufi vibe. You know, his mom directed Kama Sutra. Like, spiritually, they're shit libs compared to even like conservative Hindus like us. So to call them Islamist is so funny to anybody who's like remotely in the know. Like, to me, he's an American character. And yeah, if you're an American leftist, you should model yourself off Zohran. Zohran feels American. He feels New York. That's the way that he talks. That's the way that he looks. You know, he's studied, obviously. He's a very smart guy. He's probably read a decent amount of history in the way that you actually actionalize these moments. And that is very much, man, it really is a damn shame he can't run for president. Like, if he won New York, he should just immediately announce, like, the next day. Because I don't know if he would win per se, but like, damn, it would be interesting. It really, to be honest,
I think he would really have a shot. He's just talented. He's just talented.
He's good. He's smart.
You know, he's got a political sense. Yeah,
I like it. But you know, as people know, I don't like. I guarantee you, Zohran and I would not get along. But it's like, I have to respect. People respect
like
the
this.
game.
Like, if you met him personally, I guarantee you actually would get along with him.
I mean, we had him on. He was great. He was easy to talk to.
There's cultural elements here that people aren't reading into. I'm joking.
Saagar's
but
bringing his cultural baggage to the table here.
I respect him as a politician.
Yeah, Emily, we go ahead with any of that, and then we can actually skip ahead to a little bit of Zohran stuff, and then come back to the Epstein stuff, because there is a bunch of let me play this saw of Dean Phillips. Well, why don't we do that? Saying that there's no room in the party for both him and Zohran, which is just like very self-defeating on a lot of levels. So let me go ahead and let's take a listen to this.
The current DNC chair, Ken Martin, fellow Minnesotan, used you as an example in saying the party is a big tent. They can welcome people from different ideological, geographic perspectives. I think he used the example of, you couldn't win a race in Ilhan Omar's district and she couldn't win a race in yours. Is there room for you and Mamdani in the Democratic Party?
You know, I think it's a fine question. I think it's one that many Republicans have been asking about, whether there's room for traditional conservatives in a party now led by MAGA Republicans like Donald Trump. The answer ultimately, I think, is no. You know, we do share many of the same values. In fact, most Americans share a lot of the same values. But as a political party, yes, you want diversity. You want some differences of opinion, perspective, life story, politics, and experience. But when you have socialists in the Democratic Party, I don't know how anybody could argue that would be beneficial for the party or for the country. Therein lies the great challenge. Same thing on the right, Omar. Is MAGA the future of the Republican Party? If it is, there is going to be a new, grand, successful third party in America, because the overwhelming majority of Americans want neither far left or far right politics. They want decency, they want common sense, competency, and cooperation. And no party right now is elevating candidates who represent those ideals.
Emily, I saw people sharing this with the news clip about the time that Dean Phillips showed up at an event and literally no one was there, combined with the video that Zohran just put out where he's trying to record one of his like trademark videos and he's just being mobbed for like selfies and like, oh my God, I love you. I voted for you. You're the best. Let me get a selfie. Let me, you know. So in any case, which direction, Democratic Party?
But I mean, so he just said something that is so true. And I have to defend Dean Phillips on this point, which is that neither party is putting forward candidates that respond to what people actually want. This, I am sorry to do this again, Saagar, but you also made this point when you were talking about the America Party with
we talked about
Tucker,
it yesterday on the show.
Which is, but this is exactly it. They always think that the third party is the third way party, right? That it's the party of austerity and compromise and centrism. But what people actually want is very different than what any type of billionaire elite, Dean Phillips, sort of a Nepo baby, thinks that actually they need, that the voters actually want. So it's not responsive to what people actually want.
Here's my other thing is like, you know, he's like, oh, he's a socialist, so that's not compatible. I'm trying to get an interview with Tom Swazi, who has like a similar Zohran critique. I really want to ask him, okay, which of these policies do you find to be completely out of bounds that you can't even exist in the state? Like, okay, put the label aside. Who cares what he calls himself? Is it the free buses, which are supported by like 70% of New Yorkers? Is it free and affordable daycare, which is like also wildly popular? Is it, you know, the rent freeze on already rent controlled apartments? Like, what is it that is so outrageous? Is it 5 publicly owned grocery stores? Like, what are we talking about here that's so crazy that you can't exist in the same party? And we all know what the real answer is
Israel.
If Zohran had the right answers on Israel, Dean Phillips wouldn't have an issue. Bunch of Kirsten Gillibrand wouldn't have an issue. Richie Torres wouldn't have an issue. All of these people, John Fetterman, were so panicked and upset because he's a socialist. No, it's not about him being a socialist.
They exist alongside Ilhan Omar and AOC.
Yeah.
Right.
You are upset because he wouldn't back down with your little, you know, oh, well, does Israel have a right to exist as a Jewish state? And he's like, how about a state with equal rights? Or, you know, that he supports BDS, or that he didn't back down when they asked him, which is not even something he said, like, hey, how about globalize the Intifada? Will you condemn this language? And he's like, no, here's where it comes from. And I'm not in the business of word policing. The fact that he wouldn't bend at all on any of those things when he was pressed and like under fire, that's what they actually, it's not the free buses. Like, they don't like that stuff, but it's not that. It's not that. It is Israel. And Dean Phillips cannot see himself existing in the same party as someone who says everyone should have equal rights within Israel, and the status quo is apartheid, and this is a genocide, and it's unacceptable.
That's why it's just so preposterous. You know, I had high hopes for Dean, as people remember, because Dean had an opportunity. No, for real. He was the Cassandra on Biden's age. He could have played that well. He could have done the Obama 2002 thing where he's like, I was the only guy who came and spoke out against the war when it wasn't popular. I mean, that's credibility, you know, even whenever it didn't, nobody cared about Obama's speech at the time. He's a state senator. Who was he even talking about Iraq for? But that's political talent. That's political entrepreneurship. And Dean is independently wealthy. You know, he could have financed or, you know, played it into something different. But unfortunately, since then, he's become like a weird, like Elon fanboy. And then, you know, he was like anti-Biden, but now, you know, defining himself on the axis of Israel. And it's like, dude, like, that's just not, that's not what the base wants or needs right now. You know, not only in terms of the Democratic Party, but that's not where the political future is if you're like looking at the tide. So it's actually very unfortunate for somebody who, I think if he played his cards differently, had a real opportunity. But I mean, maybe it just shows that even his run against Biden wasn't really about, you know, principle or whatever. Like, it wasn't like it was just a vanity campaign at the time, which is kind of sad. Yeah.
Let's take the cynical read on it and keep playing at that thread, which is that cynically he was smart enough to see where the wind was blowing. I mean, he's from Minnesota. You talked to normal people in Minnesota a year and a half ago, and they were like, hey, is the president dead?
Right.
And so he was at least smart enough and like understood that it would age well, no pun intended, to question the president's health, that like that there would be a reckoning on that. What it shows now is that he's not smart or either smart enough or willing to see where the wind is blowing on this particular issue with the base.
Can I tell you what I firmly believe happened with Dean Phillips? Because we interviewed him multiple times. I have interviewed him on KKF. We interviewed him on Breaking Points. When he first got in against Biden, he realized that the opening was to the left. And so even though he'd just been like a run-of-the-mill, voting for Biden's agenda, like very centrist politician, he moved himself to the left. And remember, he talked about like, I had these conversations and I realized we need to be more economically populist. And then when it came to Israel, that was just like, that was a place he was not willing to go. And I had some pretty heated exchanges with him over exactly that. And I think that the Israel position has really kind of driven an increasing like right-wing shift from Dean Phillips because, and this is something you see happen all the time, is like, this is one issue that's like central to his identity. He sees the people that he's aligned with, they're more on the right. And it is just like any semblance of, I'm going to become more progressive. All of that is gone because it's all sort of being driven by his commitment to Israel. And you see this with like, Fetterman, Richie Torres, a lot of characters on the right who see their unwillingness to give any credence to Palestinians' right to like exist and live. They see that as like they're standing up to the woke mob. And that becomes sort of like core to their identity. And so, that's how you end up in this place where you think you're being a renegade by literally towing the line of the Trump administration, the Biden administration, like AIPAC, all of these very powerful, well-organized entities. And you think somehow you're being a renegade. But that really is, I think that is exactly the trajectory that played out with Dean Phillips, where he started off thinking, I need to get to the left. And then it just ran into the Israel wall and his whole political identity sort of shaped and formed around that.
Also a good example of the admin missing the vibes. Yeah, they think that like the Khalil Ozturk stuff, at least at the time, they thought it was playing well.
I know.
It looked like
I talked to them about it. I said,
did they really?
I talked to them about it. I said, what the fuck do you think you guys are doing? I said, do you just not understand like the disconnect that's happening here? And they're like, oh, you're out of touch. You've been spending too much time with us. I said, all right, we'll see. We'll check in. Yeah. That's always what I say. And lo and behold, it's so funny because, 3 years ago, they're like, hey, man, can I get Joe Rogan's number or Andrew Schultz? And I was like, oh, yeah. It's like, maybe some of us know a little bit about where things go. But look, they don't listen. They're huffing up Fox. Trump is actually more addicted to Fox today than at any time before. That's what I hear.
Really?
And it's crazy, actually, because he has to be brought like printouts of people's tweets who disagree with it. That's kind of how he keeps up with like Laura Loomer or any of these other people. That's because people will print these things out and they'll kind of show him. That's the extent to which he engages with the online world. And it's just so funny because he doesn't know. He really doesn't.
The Epstein stuff, he does not know. Yeah, for this exact reason.
JD and the rest of them can't be forgiven on this because they're actually on. By the way, they're probably more online than I am or the rest of them. Like they do know. And so for them, it's like, I just don't get, where a lot of this cope and stuff comes from and how they think that people are just going to sit there and take it. Especially, they really believe that these podcast guys were like useful idiots, that they could just like sit and glaze them. And, I've already watched basically all of them turn in some way. I don't know if you guys saw like Theo Vaughn in an episode after JD was on. He was like, yeah, I really hated his answer on Palantir or something. I was like, wow. You could see it. Like all of them are starting to get like this kind of like gross vibe. And, look, they're at the end of the day, like they rose independently and they have independent income streams. They're not mainstream media. They don't care about the connections to a certain extent or access. And so they thought it was cool to have Trump on, and that's mostly what it was really all about. And so, you can only like take him and take advantage of him, I guess, like so many times before they're like, yeah, man, like I really don't like a lot of the stuff that you're doing. And I think that's really starting to permeate in the cult. I mean, Tucker is another example. I mean, it's like there's some of the most critical comments you probably ever hear. And I just put all that stuff together and I see things just blown in a very, very different direction. But the White House, it cannot be emphasized enough. Like Emily said, they think they're on cloud nine. Like they are like, we are winning. It's never been better. The Epstein thing is a blip. Anybody not on the team is just a loser, panicking, whatever. The polls are fake. And I'm just like, okay. I mean, maybe that's a good transition to Canada, Krystal. They're about to slap, I mean, this is insanity. That was the lowest in terms of his economic approval was during the Mexico-Canada tariff war. He's like, oh, actually, YOLO, let's go right back to it. For what reason? Yeah. Nobody knows.
Yeah, here we go. Starting August 1st, we're going to charge Canada a tariff 35% on Canadian products sent into the U.S. Still the ones that are, part of the U.S., Canada, Mexico trade agreement are exempted, but this is, an increase from the previous tariffs that have been levied on Canada, and obviously comes in a week when 22 countries just got sort of random tariffs slapped on them. I don't know if you guys saw, I was just reading this morning, Vietnam was one of two countries that we had a quote unquote deal with. Now, neither of these, the other one being the UK, neither of these really was fleshed out, but it was okay, we've got an outline of something that we can package and
concept
pretend is a deal.
Of a plan. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Now the Vietnamese are you just put a different tariff on us than what we even had been talking about. What the fuck? And now we're not even agreeing with your concept of a theory of a plan thing. What is going on? So, I mean, it's just complete madness. And I think at this point, Wall Street is just priced in the taco trade. They're just well, he's doing this now. Next week, it'll be off again. Who cares? None of it's ultimately going to matter. But at some point, it's going to matter. At some point, if you're just slapping 50% tariffs on Brazil and 35% on Canada and this country and that country and whatever, at some point that adds up to having a real impact on the real economy and on mostly working class people who will be the ones who, disproportionately bear the burden of this.
Yeah. And I think again, they're misreading it in terms of, because the way they look at the story, it's, everybody panicked and the S&P, the NASDAQ closed at all-time high, right? On Friday. NVIDIA's at 4 trillion. They're like, see, we're totally vindicated. I'm like, guys, you're only vindicated because you you always back down, right? It's it's not because of your policy. By the way. Yeah, by the way, keep going.
Please.
Yeah.
But they would argue. Well, yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, but I was going to say that their argument is that the taco is the part of it. The taco is the strategy because
but we can look at numbers. What are we getting out of this? Nothing.
Yes, all I'm saying is that's what they would respond is this.
But that's what they said about Doge too. And then, oops, lo and behold, it's federal spending went up. It's what?
Well, I think on tariffs that they want to make this argument that there's, and I'm honestly sort of torn about this argument that there's a long-term, it's bigger than what's happening on any individual week, that it's, big restructuring that's in the process. But we're now, what was it? April 2nd was Liberation Day, and nothing, to Krystal's point, nothing is really on the books except for UK. Vietnam one, not looking so good. China one, up in the air. And they are back to exactly where they were the week of April 2nd, which is Scott Bessent going on all of the shows and saying, trust us, the phones are ringing off the hook. There will be deals on deals and deals in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't know. They keep saying this stuff. I don't think that it connects. I think a lot of people are, on the economic front, I still think that they really don't quite get the discontent that they successfully were able to seize upon. Remember, what did the Biden people say? Oh, look at the S&P 500. Look at GDP. Inflation is going down. And it's guys, that's not what actually any of it was all about. And now they're basically in the same position as to why things are supposedly good. So, look, every president does it to a certain extent, but I don't know. It's just galling, when you run against these types of things, and then you basically become the same type of creature who's but look at the NASDAQ. And it's yeah, well, obviously, and if NVIDIA stock correlated, with U.S. wages, that's not exactly where we would be right now, would it?
Well, and they're counting on the sort of industrial policy, which they don't want to call it that, in the BBB that's now passed. So the write-offs retroactive to January for expensing, manufacturing, building, all of those things, and that's another thing that they need to see in the next couple of months, significant proof of concept.
I agree.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap the free portion of the show here. We're going to talk some more about Epstein. We got Israel stuff, and we will get to Bill Ackman for sure in the premium version. So if you want to get the full Friday show, subscribe at breakingpoints.com. And for premiums, that part is going to start right now.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.